It's time to look back one final time at this week's Gamecock football game. It's Rooster Rant with Alex Jones and Matt Anderson.
From the Chief Sports Network.
Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock Show. Sorry, I'm kind of laughing because Joe and Alex are making faces. It's not a lot of fun to talk about a game like Saturday. I can't lie to you. The best I can do is just laugh at it. But Gamecocks obviously fell to the Ole Miss Rebels. I think the final score was 27-3, give or take. I didn't stay in the stadium the entire time, so it was a tough one. But before we get into the game, I'd like to talk to Alex specifically about the recent run of commitments the Gamecocks have found.
Yeah, started on Friday, you had the reclassification of wide receiver Jordan Gidron, who's going from the 2026 class to 2025. He went ahead and committed to South Carolina. I think they were in a good spot there for a while, kind of head before that announcement he made on Friday. But then that kind of he was ready to go ahead and do that. And now I think that's huge for South Carolina to go ahead and get him in that class. Then, Saturday morning, Malik Clark and Jamel House both tweet out that they have announcements coming, and who was first? I think it was Jamel House was first.
No, I think it was Clark at 12 and then House at 1.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Had both of those guys. Malik Clark, I mean, obviously we've touched, seen or talked about him a lot. Had the early commitment to Florida State in the summer. And then, everybody was kind of saying just to keep an eye on that recruitment to see where that one goes. And then I think recently he decommitted from Florida State, and I think it was, pretty obvious where that one was heading. And then went ahead and committed to South Carolina. He was at the game yesterday as well. And then Jamel House was, I think kind of same lines as Gidron. Like they've been in a good spot for Jamel House for a while, coming out of Newberry. And he's a 2026 tight end coming out of Newberry, and, in a good spot. And then he announced, had an announcement coming up, and turned out he went ahead and committed to South Carolina. So that was some pretty positive news before the game on Friday and Saturday heading into that Ole Miss game.
Yeah, and Alex, really quick, do you think that the House commitment is going to be a reclassification? We're seeing that all over the country right now. I have no idea, so I'm asking you.
No, I think he's staying in that 2026 class.
You know what? I think it's a good thing. Like, stay in your class, please, because you're going to miss prom and everything else. Joe, what was your take on the run of commitments and what that means for South Carolina?
Yeah, I thought it was huge. I think all three of those guys can help your program probably immediately. Like, those are fringe guys that, as soon as they get on campus, they're going to be given a shot to make an impact for this team. And also high ceiling guys, really high ceiling guys, kind of similar, vibe or energy as, a Fred J.R. Johnson, if you will, just really high ceiling, freak athletic, or freak athletes. These guys, all of them are. So I think it's huge to pick that up. And, obviously the game didn't go the way you wanted, but you're still doing the job in recruiting. And, Mike Furry's been, kind of the highlight out of this coaching staff for this run of commitments. I would find it very hard to tell Mike Furry, no, I'm not going to come play for you. He's an unbelievable recruiter, and I can only imagine what it's like when he really, really wants you to come play for him. Like, it's got to be hard telling him no. So shout out to Mike Furry, too, for such a run this weekend.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Mike Furry is he's one of the most charismatic people you'll ever be around, and makes you feel like he's known you for 100 years when he shakes your hand. So I think that's a good thing for the Gamecocks. I think with Donovan Murph coming into the picture as well, Alex, reclassification. Do you have a timeline? What are we thinking with Donovan Murph, and is 7-8 wide receiver class too big or just the right size?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, how the numbers work out. They got Gidron and Clark now, who both going to be in that 2025 class. And you mentioned Murph, and they already had a handful of receivers already committed. So it's going to be interesting to see how the numbers work out if they do indeed land Murph. I think it seems like South Carolina's in a good spot there. There's going to be a lot of, challenges. A lot of other teams coming after him. You think of, Clemson, Alabama, Tennessee. I think he may be visiting Tennessee here in a few weeks. But, Murph, being a guy that's right down the road at Irmo, he's been to a few games already. He was at the game yesterday. So, I think South Carolina's been recruiting him really hard here, so they're going to have to see if they can find a way to kind of close this one out and see if Mike Furry can land another one for this 2025 class.
Well, I sit there and I think about like the atmosphere going into the game yesterday, and you had 3 big commitments back to back to back, and it was just like, okay, can we make this the most electric environment in the world? And we talk about Donovan Murph and other recruits that might have been in the game yesterday. I don't have the complete list, but oftentimes, like, these kids, they enjoy the atmosphere, win or loss. And I don't know if that's going to change anything for the kids that committed or did not commit. But go ahead, Joe. What's your thought there?
Yeah, no, just to throw something in there. Dylan Stewart, when he visited, that was when South Carolina got boat raced by Georgia. When Cam Smith and Darius Rush were out, it was like a noon kick. It was at home, and Dylan Stewart said it was one of the most impactful atmospheres. I mean, obviously they got him, and we'll talk about him more, I'm sure, later on in the show. But, I mean, win or loss, right? It doesn't necessarily matter. It's the atmosphere that shows up. So I like bringing that up, Matt. Good point.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times, like, how the game goes doesn't affect, like, a recruit coming to the game. If he was thinking about committing to South Carolina, like, a lot of times what happens in the game doesn't affect his recruitment. Like, it's more recruiting so relationship driven. And, I think having an environment like they did yesterday will, because they had a ton of, the recruit list was just loaded yesterday with players. And, the environment that they saw is something that's going to stick out. And, you can't ever rule out saying that an outcome of a game will, deter a player because, you just never know. But a lot of times it's just so, relationship driven. And, them seeing that environment at South Carolina is going to help South Carolina.
So the environment was absolutely fantastic leading up to the game. And I think it's time for us now to talk about the actual game. I know, Alex, you were up in the skybox. You were seeing everything. I was down in section 1. I know Joe got his eyes on the game as well. But so the game starts, and it's crazy. It's wild. It feels very, very similar to the start of the Ole Miss game. There's a 3-and-out or the LSU game, I should say. But there's a 3-and-out. Gamecocks have all the momentum in the world. It's like 12 or 13 minutes left in the first half, and the Gamecocks get the ball. Alex, I'd like for you to take me through the next couple of plays and what you saw from upstairs, and then Joe, please, tell me what you thought.
Yeah, so you get the 3-and-out, and first of all, just to single a player out, I thought Judge Collier had a really nice game for the most part. Like, that was on that first drive, he had that play where he knocked it away from Antoine Wells on that play. First of all, I thought he played really well, but then you have that drive, South Carolina's first drive, you don't really get much going on the first 2 plays, and you run it on 3rd down and leads into a fake punt, which it just seems like you saw it coming. Like, you could see just something impressed by you, wondering you wonder if this is coming. I think Ole Miss may have thought the same way because you could see just kind of how they played the punt. Like, I think they may have kept their defense out there. So I think they saw it coming. And I think, when you do that, and you didn't get it, you had the fake punt, you didn't get it. It just feels like Ole Miss, who didn't start with any momentum because of the 3-and-out, then they got momentum at that point and then drove and scored. And I think at that point, I hate to say it's a game-changing play that early in the game, but I think it kind of was just because you gave Ole Miss momentum when they didn't have it.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are certainly throwing me an alley-oop here because the momentum was lost very early. And, with a team like Ole Miss, a team that, lives and breathes on momentum, I think losing it so early for South Carolina in front of that crowd and all the hype going into this game and what it was supposed to be and everything, especially having the bye week of an extra week to stew and think about how bad you're going to beat Juice Wells and Ole Miss. All of the expectations were just kind of lost with that first drive and that fake punt. And, again, Ole Miss is that team that will capitalize on it. You saw last week with Kentucky, they didn't have momentum, right? Kentucky kept stalling them out and halting Ole Miss's momentum. But, yeah, I think the fake punt, too, you saw it coming from a mile away. It was, I don't know, like the big game circumstance and just kind of the setting of it all kind of forced the hand a little bit, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, playing, risky football that early sometimes pays off. But in a game like this, you kind of needed to do what Kentucky did and keep the game in front of you and slow play Ole Miss, because I mean from there on out, boys, I mean we know what happened.
And
Yeah.
in my opinion, like,
Go ahead,
yeah,
Alex.
and I was just gonna say, in my opinion, like, if you're gonna go for it, you're 4th and 1. Like, if you're gonna go for it, I think you just keep the offense on the field at that point, like, because you set up to where I think you have a better chance of getting the 4th and 1 with your first offense on the field than a fake punt where you basically just ran it right up the middle at the defense that was waiting for it. So, I don't know. If you're going to go for it, I would have just said keep the offense on the field and go from there.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for me, like I said this like in the stadium, like I don't hate it because like you're trying to make a potentially momentum changing game and keep the fans involved, but I if I could get in Shane's head, and I don't I've had very few conversations with Shane. I don't know. We never talked football, but at the end of the day, like most of the time, Joe, like the first 2 to 3 series are scripted. And so like you have Ole Miss who goes 3 and out. Gamecocks have momentum. And like I don't know if Shane was thinking like, well, I'll just steal like a first down here and keep the momentum going. Like we're probably going to score because we have a great first series drawn up. But why don't you just keep the offense out? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Matt. I don't understand there, because again, 4th and short is something where obviously like Alex was saying there, you want to keep the offense out there. It's one of those distances where you're backed up with all the punting yardages and everything, where guys are in the backfield faking a punt at that point. It's kind of beyond me.
Joe, like here's my thing on it really quick. Like, okay, so you're already in negative field territory. Like, if you don't get it, like they're on your side of the field. I don't understand the logic there, because you can punt it and then you can let your defense, which has been pretty good all year, put them back deeper in their territory and then like get better field position coming out of that. I hate it for Shane. I hate it for the fans, because it was an absolutely just difficult situation for everyone involved. Moving on really quick. Obviously, Ole Miss went up 7-0 after that. Gamecocks get the ball back. I think there was a first down pretty quickly, and then it was 2nd or 3rd down, and Gamecocks decided to do some other trickery that did not work.
And when you look at the play too, just from what I saw in the press box, like it looked like he had a lane too to run. Like if just hold on to the ball, it looked like he had a running lane. But I'm interested to see what you guys were going to say on just putting Robbie Ashford in the game at that point. I almost would have just leaned to keep Lenoris in the game, because they're moving the ball. Like, don't mess with what's working. That was just kind of my opinion on that as soon as it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
All right, yeah, sounds good. I don't like to second guess a lot of these play callers sometimes, and because again, Dowell's, they're in the game, they've got the headset on, they know way more than us in that certain situation. Yeah. But I don't understand that one. Right? And Alex, to your point with Lenoris moving and grooving, if this is what opening up the playbook looks like I don't think I'm fully bought in on this offense quite yet, because if you're going to open up the playbook by doing a misdirection run with your backup quarterback at that spot in this game to generate momentum, I would think you're trying to look for a flash play in that situation. But again, it's just one of those situations where in this whole game entirely, where you're kind of just scratching your head and like, in this situation too, and like it was again still kind of early in this football game, and it's like you just continued to dig your hole in that game with that reverse play. It just wasn't good.
Yeah, Alex, I sit there and I think about it, and it's just why. Like that's the biggest thing for me when you think about like what this offense clearly was in the first 2 possessions of the game. Like we're gonna take shots. We're gonna try and be aggressive. We're going to try and put Ole Miss on their heels. And you do those 2 things, and then it's almost like a scared turtle. And everybody just went into their shell and said, hey, this isn't working. So let's just try and play the Kentucky brand of football at this point. Joe, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm with it. Yeah, it just some of the coaching decisions, and again, I hate to second guess like all of this, and it's a weird
Oh, I
spot.
do too, but it's just like
Yeah, exactly. And this is where
you
we're
see
at.
it.
It's the nature of it, for sure. Absolutely. And, again, we were talking about how great Mike Furry was. And, but some of the play calling, we're just at that point. Like, it sucks to be here. Like the first comment, it's like, do we have to do it? Yes. We have to look at some of the play calling and some of the situational stuff because it wasn't good. And, I mean, I don't know, Matt. This could just be me, but even watching that game yesterday, it felt like the team didn't have as much fight in it as you would expect for this Ole Miss. I mean, they came out ready, but it was also kind of a flatness to them as well that I just wasn't.
Joe, I'll say this really quick, and Alex, feel free to piggyback on this, but like the defense had fight, and the defense had multiple times where they were offsides on third downs. And at some point, I don't know if it's innate or if it's something that the defense actually feels, but we got to get the ball back. We got to force a turnover. We got to do something because we got to flip the field. And I don't think the Gamecock coaches did any benefit to the football team, especially the offensive side of the ball, with giving them positive field. And I think that's happened far too often this year, which is honestly distressing to me.
Yeah, and I think kind of going to that point, for one, they got to stop these self-inflicted penalties. Like the offside stuff has to stop. I think you hoped going into a bye week that was going to be something that you cleaned up, and it just didn't seem like that happened. But yeah, I mean, you talked about the defense, and I thought for the most part the defense did what they had to do to keep South Carolina in the game because Ole Miss, we've talked about so much about their high-powered offense. Like we knew there were going to be those explosive plays in the game, and there were. But to hold Ole Miss to 27 points, I think if you told South Carolina fans that Ole Miss was going to be at 27 points, I think most would think, okay, South Carolina has a chance in this game then. But I just thought there were too many times where you just pretty much put 7 points on a platter for them. You talk about the fake punt, kind of just put Ole Miss, just gave them momentum that Ole Miss did not have, which was, I think, ultimately just what took them down.
Well, Alex, I'll ask you this question, and Joe, this is to you as well, but if I told you that Jackson Dart was going to go 14 for 27 and South Carolina was going to outrush Ole Miss in the game, what would – come on.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah, it's a W.
Yeah, it's a W. And look, I've seen some comments different places. We're all on social media. We're all on the Big Spur. We're all seeing everyone's frustration. And I'll be honest, I think that the frustration is warranted in a lot of ways. I don't know what the solution to that is because, you have, and we'll talk about this later, but, Shane sees it. He's way smarter at football than we are. He sees it every single game. And it's just one of those things where, Shane's now, I think 4-8 in October at South Carolina. And look, when you get to October, you're playing really good teams because you're in the SEC. But at some point, the fans are going to sit there and say, why am I spending X amount of dollars to come to a game? Why am I yelling my heart out and then Sunday, going to watch NFL and watching their fantasy team lose? It's just not a good thing.
Yeah. Not great. This is how you lose the faith. It's starting this up and down, and it's starting to seem like a South Carolina thing. The longer that I'm here, the longer it seems like as soon as you lose faith in a team or start to not believe the team will turn things around when you least expect it. So and I think going into this week, Matt, with as much hype going forwards, and I think the expectations that were built up over these last 2 weeks, it's not out of the question the way that they performed, right? If we're talking about the ups and downs that just come with it, but yeah, undisciplined.
Yeah, and look, I think at some point you look at the undisciplined plays and you have to look at the sideline. And Shane said that, and we'll get to Shane's comments a little bit later. But Shane said, we're an undisciplined team. We're not doing things that we coach every day in practice. And I'm sure it's frustrating for him. But moving through here, the Gamecocks were down 24 to, I think 3 at halftime. I think that even in the second quarter, like Gamecocks had 2 different possessions with an opportunity to put points on the board. It ended with more points for Ole Miss with a touchdown. It just sucks the life out of a stadium is the best way I can say it.
Yeah, and even from the press box, you could kind of feel it because, being up there, like you can feel, you can hear the environment, but, you can't get that full experience. But you kind of felt that in the second quarter that the momentum just wasn't there for South Carolina. And I think the stadium felt that. It just, part of that was you weren't getting really anything going offensively. So, I think, we've talked about this a lot here already, but just those key plays in the beginning of the game, just I think Matt, you and I talked about just the momentum in that stadium was just sucked out of there, and it's just I think it was hard to get it back, especially when you weren't getting anything going offensively.
And I think like for Shane and Joe, I'd love to get your take on this. Like I'm a Shane fan. Like please do not hear this as like me hating Shane, but like I think Shane has probably like 4 to 5 like decisions he makes in a game. Every single loss that he would like to take back. And it's one of those things where we all saw Dabo Swinney go through that at Clemson. We've seen a lot of coaches go through it. It doesn't have to just be Dabo Swinney at Clemson because, that orange team in the upstate, but like it feels like for me, like gotta ride through it and just pray and hope that Shane figures it out.
Yeah, plain and simple. It's one of those things. Coach Beamer, like you said, Matt, it comes down to those 5 or 6, plays or decisions, especially in the SEC. I mean, the margins might be narrower, even down to 1, 2 plays. A lot of coaches in the league will talk about that. And again, I think with this game in particular, as you were losing momentum going into the half, the second quarter certainly didn't help. At halftime, when the fans and everybody's kind of left to linger with what the heck just happened. When South Carolina was able to finally catch their breath at half, the game was, it was already over. And that was just kind of the atmosphere. I guess I gathered from watching this game and just how it felt and whatnot. But yeah, to have that feeling, especially going into half at home too, is not a good one. So, and the way that the rest of it turned out, I don't know what was said at halftime, but yeah, like just not pretty going into the half.
Well,
sure.
I would think that the game and like anyone that saw the game, like the game was effectively over at halftime. I see Alex is having some internet issues, but like Alex told me, like he was up in the bird's nest and said, like, I don't know what you want Lenoris to throw to because nobody's open. Yeah. And that's a testament to Ole Miss as well. And we sit here and we say, like, okay, well, take a shot deep. Well, yeah, take a shot deep, but at the same time, if nobody's open, like, what do you want Lenoris to do? I don't know if the second half could have given us anything more as, people watching the game that says like South Carolina is on their way up. But sometimes you have to go all the way down to find your way up the mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree fully. And again, just you look at Shane Beamer's teams too in the past. Coming off of the loss against Florida a couple years ago in the Swamp, right? You lost pretty bad, and then they went and beat Tennessee at home and went on to beat Clemson. So, it is one of those points where the lowest of lows come before the highest of highs. So maybe they do something crazy moving forward. But I know we got to hit a commercial break here. So,
let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and that break so Alex can get back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll hit this quick break, and then hopefully we'll have Alex on the other side. But
So back to the rant. Yeah, it's a tough time for Gamecock fans. It's a tough time for. I just feel bad for the fans. Like it's a tough loss. Like it's one of those things where your big brother beats you like 10 times in a row, and I don't have a good solution for it. Like going to the second half, I'm not sure how much we actually have to analyze this, unless Joe or Alex have something that.
I mean, just you couldn't get anything going offensively. I mean, it's just again, it goes back like the defense was doing everything it could, I think, to keep you in that game and give you a chance to get the offense back, and you just couldn't do it. And you kind of go into you talking about the fans. Like I think it's just one of those where you had the LSU game happen, and you thought, okay, maybe this is a chance to kind of redeem yourself from that, and you just didn't. I'm not going to say they didn't show up, but I mean they just didn't. It just didn't seem like it just felt like a missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Missed opportunity is a great way to put it. Again, especially with all the hype going into it, you had all of the motivation in the world with Juice Wells, who also had a decent game for what it's worth on the other side of things. Certainly still not the number one wide receiver over there, but again, did enough damage to the point where, you noticed him. But yeah, missed opportunities, undisciplined. It's exactly the wrong performance. If you had to make a checklist of what you didn't want to do on Saturday against Ole Miss, I think you did just about every one of them. Undisciplined. I mean, the penalties, we can talk about that as well. Just not great. Not smart football. They weren't playing as a team. It was not unified. Just all over the place. And now the good part is, right, you have another opportunity next week. Like this isn't the final game of the season, so yeah, there is absolutely an opportunity to get things going. But yeah, no, just sloppy and undisciplined.
I mean, I think that if any Gamecock fan watched that game or went to the game and said the best moment would be Juice fumbling the ball into the end zone, and that was like your takeaway of like, yeah, let's go. Like that was not what you were hoping for. But yeah, like this game, like I hate to say it, but at some point you have to wash it the same way you had to wash the LSU game, like 3-2. You are what you are, and you're 1-2 in SEC play. Looking forward, gosh, I mean, we can talk a little about the games over the weekend, but you're heading to Tuscaloosa on Saturday. After that, you head to
be a mad
Oklahoma.
Group.
And then you have an open week, and then you're done with October and you're into November. I mean, I don't want to. We'll talk so much about the Alabama game and the Oklahoma game as much as like none of the three of us really want to do, but we will find angles and avenues for wins. What's your best case scenario for the Gamecocks right now to finish October?
I mean, Alabama, it wasn't going to be easy before, and now it's not going to be any easier because after losing to Vanderbilt, they're going to be a mad group coming in there, and they have offensively they're really, really good, and so that's going to be the matchup. It's just defense versus offense, but it's just going to be, can your offense turn around? Because I mean, obviously, 3 points is nowhere near good enough, and you're going to have to go on the road and perform, whole bunch. I mean, I don't think you can put into words how much better they're going to have to perform against Alabama to have a chance in that game. And then you look to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's defense is really, really good. Now they're struggling on offense, but the defense is really good. So, they as a whole, the team has to continue to improve. But just on that, especially that offensive side of the ball, like there's got to be a huge step taken forward.
Yeah, absolutely, huge step. And I mean, those goalposts are still probably hanging at Aldine's in Broadway. Like that, this is going to be a very, very, very pissed off Alabama team. Like we don't have anything to compare it to, like a bounce back, or revenge game, if you would. Like nobody has ever lost to, or Alabama has never lost to Vanderbilt, right? Like we haven't seen it to where like they can get angry. So I'm expecting all that and more from Alabama. This is just a sports media take for me in general. I have a stigma against noon kicks in conference on the road. You never come out ready to play. It doesn't matter how early you get there. If you get there Thursday, you still got it. Like it doesn't matter. It's really, really, really hard to come out with energy and enthusiasm at noon when you're not playing in your own backyard. So
And then on top of that, Joe, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
Tuscaloosa is an hour behind, so it's like an
yeah,
11
exactly.
o'clock.
Yeah.
It's an 11
Yeah.
o'clock take. Brutal.
I mean, like if a Gamecock person wanted to say, like, okay, here's how we beat Alabama, I think it's tough, but all right, well, Vanderbilt just beat them, so if Vanderbilt can beat them, anyone can beat them. But you go back and you do the transitive property, which I don't think actually applies to college football. But you beat Kentucky by 25 at Kentucky, and Kentucky barely lost to Georgia. Georgia barely lost to Alabama on the road. I'll be honest, like I'm not looking forward to this matchup for the Gamecocks. I think that Dixieland Delight is going to be a very fun time for folks in Tuscaloosa. I have not picked against the Gamecocks this entire season, and I'm probably about to this week. So, like you kind of think about it, you watch it, like okay, Alabama's probably a loss 3-3, and then you get to Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is the key game on the schedule. And we'll get to it eventually, but you beat Oklahoma, you get to 4-4 or 4-3. I think what would it be, Alex?
You'd be 4-3 if you beat Oklahoma.
Yeah, so you beat Oklahoma. Like Oklahoma is the game to circle. You have the bye week, and then you get into November. Shane's been pretty good in November so far as the Gamecocks head coach, but. I guess where I'm going with this, and maybe you guys agree or disagree, but I think it gets kind of scary for the Gamecocks. Is you get in November and then you got to go to freaking Vanderbilt who just beat Bama.
Yeah, I think you start to wonder what the pressure on the team starts to look like, because if say you dropped Alabama, and let's also just going by the numbers, let's say you dropped Oklahoma, so you're 3-4 in the bye week. It's going to make for a long bye week, and then you got Texas A&M coming in who looked really good yesterday. So I just wonder if that case scenario happens, what would the pressure on the team look like? Because obviously then you would have to win 3 games out of A&M, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Wofford, and Clemson to go to a bowl game. So I think that would just be interesting to see like what the team would look like from that standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, Alabama's going to be scary. And then after that, because like we were just talking about, I think it can be a trap game. If you come out with the same effort that you came out with against Ole Miss, Vanderbilt might beat the brakes off of you. Like Clark Lee is doing something at Vanderbilt. Since he's taken that job, it's been a complete 180 for that program. And so, yeah, like in Missouri, Missouri got boat raced yesterday, but, there's still a good team up there in the other Columbia, like Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, all good teams. And then, you saw what A&M did, right, to Missouri. So they're all on the other side of this, 3-game nightmare stretch in October for South Carolina. Does November get a little easier? I guess so.
You get to play Wofford, which helps.
Yeah, exactly. Wofford does help. But Alex, I like that point against the pressure, right? You started off well, and so expectations started to build, and the pressure did get tacked on. It'd be a little different if they didn't start off as well as they thought they were, or at least giving LSU a game. I think and that tampered expectations a little bit as well. But yeah, this team is looking for an identity once again, and not at the best point either. You'd like to be rolling as you're headed into these games, but now you're swimming in open water, struggling to find some identity, some life.
Yeah, I feel like every Gamecock fan felt that 4-1 was possible after the start of the season, and right now, I think that every Gamecock fan feels like, okay, well, might not win another game, but that's the great thing about college football. It's the great thing about being in the SEC. Hell, y'all, Vanderbilt just beat Alabama. So, like, don't tell me there's a zero-sum game in every single opportunity that any team in the SEC has. But it's a tough road to hoe. And right now, I think the Gamecocks need to focus on getting to a bowl. And look, like, every game is a game at a time. Like, the Gamecock team's not saying, like, all right, let's just get to a bowl and be happy. But I think that is what is necessary for the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And I mean, sitting at 3 wins now, like, I think when you looked at the beginning of the season, you probably said at the end, when you looked at the end of the season, it's okay, we can count or feel very good about Vanderbilt and Wofford being wins. I mean, you watch what Vanderbilt did yesterday, and you got to go on the road. You know they're going to be motivated to beat you for the
On
first
the
time.
road to Vanderbilt is now a question mark. That is wild to me.
And what I think it's 2008 was the last time Vanderbilt
I
beat
was
South
there for
Carolina.
that game.
Yeah, so I mean, they're
Go
going to
ahead,
be
Joe.
motivated.
What were you about to say?
Oh no, nothing. I was gonna say, Matt, don't go to this one because I'm sure Alabama can probably attest. Broadway's a lot less fun when you lost to Vandy, as I can imagine. But Alex, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah, I mean, I said what I wanted. Like, I mean, it's just looks a little bit more daunting than you would have thought at this point in the season. From what we were guessing in the preseason, I think.
Well, Gamecocks have their work cut out for them. We will be here all week to fuss and discuss and talk about it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fussing going on this week. We are here for it. We can be your therapist. We're happy to do it. But with that being said, we're going to call it a night. For me, Matt, and for Alex and Joe, we appreciate y'all more than you know. When you hang out with us, you give us the most valuable thing you have, which is your time. And spending time with us after a loss, like, we're all sickos doing this, but we appreciate you more than you know. So everyone have a great week. Flush the loss, and we'll see you soon. Have a good one, everybody.